So we're back for another episode of my running story. So my running story I've split into 3 sections. Part 1, which was how I got into running initially. Part 2, how I got into marathons and my early marathons. And then part 3, from 2019, when I started to take the marathon seriously and running in general seriously, when we got a coach. So we did part 1, and this is part 2. Now, I've taken you along with my run this morning, a 75-minute run. I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm getting my 75-minute run done, as well as a 1-hour vlog. So, how did I get into marathons? Well, as a kid growing up in the 80s, all the sport on TV was on terrestrial TV, so I used to watch all the sports, whether it was football, rugby, cricket, athletics, anything which was on telly, I'd sit and watch. And the London Marathon was one of those iconic events, and it started in 1981. I remember watching that first one, and when they finished, they held hands and finished across the line together. I remember Charlie Spedding winning, and many others. I don't guess I watched every single London Marathon, but I watched most of them, and I never ever thought I would get the opportunity to run one myself. Back then, windy. So back then, the marathon seemed an impossible task. It was sort of like someone wanting to conquer Everest or something. Very few sort of done it. And like I say, it seemed like it was pushing the human body to its outer limits. So I think that was where, I can certainly relate to back all those years ago. And then, obviously, I started running at the end of 2013. Joined the running club in January 2014. And then April of 2014, the local running club had a minibus for runners and spectators down to the London Marathon, and I joined them on that. And that was a big inspirational moment. You certainly think, wow, what a big event, how special it is. So yeah, going to watch that again planted perhaps as a little seed. 2015 came, and again I went down on the minibus to watch the London Marathon. And Leslie Robbins, I mentioned that there was a group of local runners heading to Florence in the November, and asked, did I fancy going out with them and having a go at my first marathon. So I had to think about it, and I said yes, we'll give it a go. It obviously seemed daunting at the time. You don't even think you'll ever be able to achieve it, but it's something to aim for. A good goal through the summer. So yeah, we accepted the challenge. So through the summer of 2015, for whatever reasons, I just wasn't running as much. I think, let's say around that March, April time, I had an injury after my first half marathon. I was out for 1 or 2 months. And through the summer, I was hitting the gym more than I was running. And it got to the 1st of November, and I thought, shit, if you want to do this, you've got to start, at least putting a couple of long runs in. I know it's too little too late, really, but if you're going away in a month's time, you got to just go and do a little bit. So I went out and done a 15 miler, and then the following week I attempted a 17 miler. I remember 3/4 of the way through that having to stop. It sounds stupid, but I got upset and had a little cry to myself. I thought, you ain't going to be able to bloody do this. A local runner, Lorena, was running towards me, and I joined her for a mile or two. Just got myself back together and got over it. So then the Florence marathon came before you knew it, and didn't really know what to expect. Obviously you take the advice of everyone around you, and they all say, be conservative, don't go off too fast, don't waste energy. And obviously I listened, but really I think, looking back, I was probably too conservative on that first one, even with no training. I went out, first 5k was 27 minutes. 27 minutes! It's whatever was I doing. I went through 10k in 50 odd minutes, Even back then, as a runner, I was a 18-minute park runner. Probably a 38-minute 10K, and let's say, I know you have to respect the course and the distance, but I think I went out way too conservatively. If you're going to run 27 minutes for 5k, you're never going to make that time up again. I think I went through halfway in 150 odd. So the same again, you know, you're gonna, if you're running those sorts of paces, you're going to expect a 4-hour marathon. But we got it done. I think I ran 4:01 chip time. I was happy with that on the day. You know, when you cross the line, it brought tears to my eyes, getting that medal put around your neck. It's emotional. You know, before setting out, you don't even imagine you can do it, you can get it done. So it was good to cross the finish line. We had a good trip away in Florence, a lovely city. I'd definitely recommend it. So the group in Florence, they had a special prize for the worst athlete, a t-shirt, a cock t-shirt, and I think really, you know, they wanted to give me the cock t-shirt, but I managed to wiggle my way out of that. I don't know who did get that cock t-shirt in the end, but I remember halfway through the marathon, I remember Emma Thompson coming past me, tapping me on the shoulder, going, "Oi, oi!" You know, I'd never live that down. But there you go, you know, that was the first one done. You know, great experience, totally rewarding, and it just sets you on your path for the future. So then we headed into 2016, and we entered the Manchester Marathon, which is sort of like the second biggest in England after the London Marathon. You know, everyone sort of tries and gets that good for age automatic qualification for London. So Manchester was a good opportunity, and to train a bit better and see if I could push those boundaries. Obviously I probably imagined I'd get a PB, but you know, you don't know what you're fully capable of at that stage. So yeah, we went to Manchester. There was 4 of us, myself, Richard Dixon, Graham Leeson and Stuart Robbins. I did train a lot better. I ended up running 3 hours 22 or 23 if I remember. Those last 6 miles were hard. I remember having to fucking hell, look where you're going. So let's go back after that. So Manchester 2016, yeah, about 220, 322, 323. Struggled the last 6 miles, lots of walking, but like I say, it was a big improvement on the Florence Marathon. So then that autumn, that same running group that went to Florence were heading to Amsterdam. So I joined them on that trip too. And same again. Put a bit more hard work in. Same again, it was a good trip, as in visiting Amsterdam. The marathon itself, don't really remember a huge amount. I remember it being flat. I remember running out along the canal, over the bridge and coming home, starting and finishing in the Olympic Stadium. I ran 3 hours 13 minutes, so roughly another 10 minutes off the PB. So we was heading in the right direction. The times were coming down. I was probably getting a little bit more confident, but there was still a long way to go. So then we was heading into 2017, and once again I entered the Manchester Marathon. Training was probably the best I'd ever done and had, and I was looking forward to going into it. I bought a pair of the Nike Streak riding shoes, which were probably one of the best at the time. Once again, can't really remember too much of the Manchester Marathon in 2017. I know, same again, I struggled sort of from mile 20 onwards again. Lots of walking. I remember finishing in 3 hours 12 minutes. So another PB. Another minute or so off. So I've got to be happy with that. We're chipping away. And then through the summer of 2017, I used to listen to a podcast, Marathon Talk, every week, and on there they were having a trip to Kenya to run a marathon and raise money for a local village in Kenya. So I applied and went on that. Now that was an amazing holiday, an amazing experience. The marathon itself, it was a trail. If you'd call it a trail marathon. There was lots of elevation gain. It was a very hot day, and to be honest, it wasn't really my cup of tea, and I sort of let myself down really. I just virtually walked the whole thing, in 6 or so hours. Not really my sort of terrain, or at the time I wasn't sort of used to the heat. But it was very rewarding. It was a great experience to be able to go out there and run there. We ran with some elite runners, and we went on the local athletics track. And we went to a local school, and like I say, we all raised some money. I think as a group we raised 50,000. So that was really good. So then, going into 2018, I think I'd qualified I think I had a good forage for London, and so the same again, you know, through the winter, training as hard as I could. So I'd got hold of the Nike Vaporfly, which was the latest shoe out at the time, the latest running technology, the new foam, carbon plate, and I was saving them for the London Marathon. I got myself in good shape. I was thinking I was in about 3:05 shape, which would have been brilliant. My PB's 3:12 at the time. But on the day of the London Marathon, it was the hottest London Marathon ever on record. I can't remember the exact temperature, but it was 26 or 28 degrees. It was very hot. I remember I was walking by mile 11, which is crazy, you know. You do all that training, and by mile 11 you're really struggling. But you know, you just get it done, you do the best you can. And I finished in 3 hours 26, I think it was. But considering it was the hottest one on record, you know, you have to take that. You don't know what's going to happen on the day. It's just what it was. You move on. But it was a great experience to run London. You know, the crowds are absolutely awesome. The route is iconic. And virtually every single runner dreams of running and completing the London Marathon. So then we was heading to the autumn of 2018, and that same group which I went to Florence and Amsterdam with, they were heading to Venice. So I tagged along and went with them to Venice. Now through the summer of 2018, again, for whatever reason, I can't really remember, but I wasn't really putting the training in. So I dropped out of the marathon and put myself into the 10k. I just perhaps didn't think I was capable of doing myself justice. You know, I was still looking for PBs really, and I just don't think I could do myself justice given the training I'd put in. So I dropped down to the 10k, and that was enjoyable. You know, running through Venice over the bridges. There was a fair bit of water. The city and the route flooded. You know, generally water was up to your knees, and so there was a lot of running in water on that occasion. I think I got away with it more than most, because by the time the marathon has hit the city, say 1 or 2 hours later, the water was even higher. So yeah, same again, Venice was an amazing city, you know, certainly unique, not another city like it in the world. It's definitely a city I'd like to go back to. One evening, whilst we was in Venice, sitting down with the running group, having a chat with Malcolm Tough, you know, he inspired me to, you know, try better. Could say, do better and be better. And so, from that point of having a chat with Malcolm, I was looking to bring a coach on board. So I was searching the internet and stuff for a personal running coach, and in early 2019 I made contact with Purdue Performance, Adam Clark and Charlotte Purdue, and yes, I joined them in the May 2019, and that was when my marathon sort of journey really took off and we sort of went to the next level. So that's part 3, and that'll be in the next one. So like, comment, ask questions, happy to help, subscribe, and we'll see you in part 3.
Sean, man racing, do better, be better, do better, be better.